Hey guys, it's Matt. This video is on what I call the download in people. And what that is, if anybody is new here, is people tend, of course, to act in a collective. Not quite the Borg just yet. You're not quite assigned designations and unimatrixes just yet, but people move very quickly into a collective state. You can't put the entire Western world into a face covering in 4 to 6 weeks in April in 2020 unless there's literally some sort of download going on with means and mechanisms we don't quite understand. For anybody that's new, what is the download? We haven't done this for a while. It's probably good to revisit the basics on a topic this big. It's just the strange behavior of the collective society and the microcosm of that, the people around you, how they act, your friends, family, neighbors. The most obvious symptoms are nobody questions anything. Everything that authority lays down is completely accepted. They just take the knee before it. There isn't even any pushback when something very, very odd presents itself. This goes back, of course, it's not just the C thing. It goes back to all the strange Lemony Snicket's events that have happened since 2001. Not getting people to be able to notice that it's odd there's an inflated tire at the bottom. Not getting people to notice it's odd that none of these victims' families ever sheds a tear. It's all related to the download. And it's all related to why we see the complete breakdown in society/reality. It's been a clown show for quite a while. We always talk about, well, what do we have in common? How come we can see it? How come we've dropped veils? And recently we've been talking about the creativity aspect we all probably had as a kids and our ability to use our imagination. And we'll find other areas and other common ground going forward as to why we can see right through the general ruse. It's really ridiculous at this point. I would say at least in the 80s and the 90s, they presented it professionally and legitimately. Today, it's just completely bizarre how anybody can buy into it. But it's not just about focusing on us and why we can see. We want to focus in this download conversation, why can't every one of your family members at the family reunion, my family reunion early this summer, late spring, why can't they see it? And there is no other explanation at this point, in my opinion, than the download. And, okay, it is the download. Do they carry invisible, my favorite Martian antennas, and they're getting an exact frequency from a giant Wi-Fi router it's buried in the bottom of the Capitol building? No, I don't think it's any sort of mechanism or technology that we'll ever be able to figure out or understand. But there's something happening here with why people act a certain way, why they question nothing, and why they go along with it, so quickly. Before diving into the details, I just want to remind anybody that's new here, I've been talking about this concept of the download in your friends and family, in the masses, whatever it is. For over 3 years, at least over 3 years, I've been talking about this. And I still watch other YouTube channels, and I know Howdy McCoskey has helped me refine the theory and had some interesting metaphors or analogies as to what's going on with how reality shifts and changes. People go along with it. We don't. My analogy of standing on the bank as the ship of fools sails away. So this is all related to the download. But my question is, how many other channels are even mentioning it? Again, I watch not a whole lot anymore. I'm really, the truth, it used to be so exciting to go to truth videos in 2012, 13, 14, maybe back to 2011. There's always something new, always something coming around the corner. We were pursuing the wrong things. We were chasing. We were probably giving it the energy that it wanted. But this is all part of going through the bog. And, there was always something, and it was fascinating. I go out to truth channels today, and it's just like, there's nothing. I don't know. There's not much there. But whatever is there, how many other people are talking about the download? How do they explain away the bizarre behavior in everyone around them? How do they? I don't know. They don't talk about it. If they are talking about it, I haven't heard them talking about it. It would be nice to have some people trying to take some of these theories to the next level. I've been talking about it for 3 years. How else do you explain the bizarre behavior, the entire, this summer, Coca-Cola Zero, Coke Zero, on the box said, in April and May, get out there and enjoy yourself. Applebee's said, welcome back to the neighborhood. And you could tell from the marketing that they were, at least in the United States, they're going to let the free-range chickens roam around and go enjoy yourself. But then as soon as they pulled the lever, I was out at Target this week, and it's back to 50% face covering. It's just right back, not the way it was, not the way it was. I don't think the pendulum can ever swing back as far. It loses muster, it loses energy. But for a few news stories to break and just to boom, it's back to where it was, and everybody just seems to change or go along with the new rules in less than 2 weeks. There's some sort of download going on, and why aren't other truth channels talking about it? Now, let's talk about what it wants, what the system wants, whatever animates the screens and its pathetic minions. What it wants is for us to spend countless hours and countless investigative energies trying to figure out exactly what the technology means and mechanism is behind the download, and why everybody just goes along with whatever Governor Cuomo comes to a podium. They just go along and they just take the knee before Khaleesi. It wants us spending, there's no point in it. It's don't do what it wants. So somebody right now is like, Matt, I hope 5G is going to be a part of this presentation. It's not. Is potentially how they tune people down to the frequency, and that's the other main analogy with the download I'll talk about in a moment, how they get people to tune down to the frequency. Are they using, quote, real tech beyond the dark arts, like 5G? Sure, it's all possible, but we're never going to know, okay? Worry about yourself. We're never going to know. Your inner knowing. Do you think the system, does it want you spending countless hours investigating the 5G relationship to this and that? Does it want you diving in there, looking outward? Of course it does. The whole reality is endless deception, manipulation, and breadcrumbs to draw you outside yourself. Therefore, the hardcore investigation, the way the reality works, play its game if you want. The hardcore investigation of exactly what 5G is doing is no different than the hardcore investigation of who Ryan Seacrest is going to interview on the red carpet. It draws you outside yourself, even if you could figure it all out. And it can't, the way the reality lays down its breadcrumbs, it can't be figured out. That's not a cop-out. It's how it works after looking at it for 10 years. It constantly will say, you're getting close. Oh, if you just put in a little bit more research. It's constantly doing the same tactics, so stop falling for it. Even if you could figure out exactly how certain frequencies, am I allowed to say these things? Certain frequencies are affecting the masses and the download and becoming a zombified Borg collective. Okay, what are you going to do about it? You going to send a note into the Dick Cavett show to become a guest? There's nothing you can do about it anyway, other than remove yourself from the frequency, worry about yourself and your spiritual advancement. Okay, one more return to basics to make sure there's no truth or child left behind. Anybody could be new here. One more return to basics before diving into some really strange stuff or looking. No theory is off the table, but I guess we've already dove into some strange stuff. Could you imagine if somebody's listening to this and like Aunt Ginny had come over to stay and help out with the kids for a few weeks, and you went down the hallway to get some crackers and she came in to the room and this was playing? Could you imagine? She'd probably call the authorities and have the kids removed from the home if anybody overheard this. So we're already into some strange shit. But anyway, what are we going to do? Try to make part of this presentation for the normies? How would that work? It wouldn't. So the best analogy that exists is, in my opinion, is the radio dial, the radio frequency. Wherever this radio frequency is, say down the dial, It is the siren song, the harpies calling for, is it the sirens call from the rocks? The harpies, it's another mythological creature that also, I think, has its siren song. But it calls to the masses, and it does everything it's in its power for non-NPCs. For this purpose of this conversation and presentation, we're not going to get into who's an NPC, who lacks soul and spirit, who's just an organic portal. We'll get into that some other time. Of course, I'm talking about for the realer the better. It wants real people to make choices so they tune themselves down to its radio frequency or as close as possible on the frequency. So it's like once you get on that frequency, and you get on that frequency by making personal choices, almost like the old soul token concept of giving yourself away, the soul token concept in a different sense here. Once you get down, and if you put yourself right on that frequency, you will do whatever the reality system wants. You will go along with everything. Now, not everybody's right on that frequency. Just saying for the few, most of you, I'm sure, would say most normies are right on the frequency at this point. My dad, for example, is right on the frequency. If somebody is right on the frequency, where I'm going with this is if you're a little off the frequency, not you, not the people listening to this, your friends and family and the people at the picnic, then it has to work a little bit harder to get those people to go along with everything. It pretty easily accomplishes its goal, but for those right on the frequency, that scene in that Harry Potter movie, Voldemort speaking to the entire Hogwarts, I'm speaking to Harry Potter, turn him in, and the girl starts screaming, and you can everybody can hear Voldemort speaking through the ether. Like, my father is on the frequency. And not only that, what are the symptoms of somebody on the frequency? Not only do they go along with everything the news says immediately. So, of course, was the absolute first, one of the first people to rent the movie Action, Jacksonation in Florida. He's calling up the phone line hundreds of times a day. He asked me to make calls. You can get in and book my appointment for the V. You can call even though you're calling from Pennsylvania. So it was one of the first ones to get that. But then the symptoms of people on the frequency, they run scripts. They absolutely are incapable of thinking for themselves. First off, they'll never give you an inch on any of your arguments. No matter what you present, no matter how logical, no matter how sound, they will never, ever give you an inch. And you know where I'm going here, but who knows who's new. They'll never say, well, you know what? That's a good point, but you know what? I'm going to stick to what Governor Cuomo said for these reasons. You're making some good points. They'll never say that. They'll never give you anything. That's a symptom of somebody on the download where they've completely lost common sense and completely lost rational thought. But they also run scripts. And the last time I was with my father, he's right on the download frequency. Now, we get into it. Does that mean he's not real? I mean, Matt, he's your father. That means he must be real. No. I'm no expert on this, but I've heard smart people talk about it, and I absolutely believe it. Just because your parents gave birth to you, and you have a spiritual connection, you know where you are in this life, you have an understanding about yourself, the people listening to this. That doesn't mean your father and mother, in my opinion, could be completely portals of the reality system without this, will just be nice to them, without the same attachment to soul or spirit, or at least some people would say soul is necessary to animate any body here. It could be local to this reality system, but others say spirit is the more larger connection to something greater. No, but in my opinion, I agree with what these smart people have said, and I know nothing about it other than when I listen to them, it's an inner knowing, inner tuning fork, and it rings, and yeah, that's right. Parents, in my opinion, don't have to be the same spiritual being that you are. Neither does your sister, your brother, or anyone else. So not only will they go along with everything, my father, Governor Cuomo says this, Governor Cuomo. I mean, we look at Governor Cuomo as one of the all-time villains, just like not even human. I mean, I'd love to do a whole Free Voice show just on Governor Cuomo. What is that thing? Like when Melvin P comes on, he's waving his hands all around. You can see me doing it, waving his hands all around. Oh, well, Steve Jobs, he was a greater magician. I'm a lesser magician. Waving his hands all around. Like, what is that thing? He ain't the same as you and me. One of these things ain't not like the other. He ain't the same as you and me. We know that, but that's not the purpose of this presentation. So my father will run scripts. He, okay, 2 scripts. I had to get the pull me aside speech that I'm very worried about you. You've chosen not to rent that wonderful movie with Carl Weathers. You've chosen not to. I don't want to worry constantly. I'm not. Can you explain it to me? Why? No, I can't, Dad. I can't explain it to you in a few minutes. My whole reasoning behind this. It's like what Schwarzenegger said about Franco Columbu before the Olympia. If he's in good shape, a book is into a room. A book is both into a room, and by the end of the 24 hours or 48 hours together, he'll be ready to lose. But Dad, if you really want to explain it, I'll book us into a room together, and I'll show you all the stuff on the internet. Well, he can't even spend 10 seconds listening to me about any of this truth stuff. So I say to Dad, there's no way I can explain it to you. All right, so I don't want to run this. I really think, will you do it for me? He says, do it for me. I'm not going to do it for you. Okay, that's one thing. The other thing was, I guess it was an hour earlier, he runs climate change and global warming scripts. So if you say one thing about how damn hot it is in Pennsylvania, Bot, if you're listening, Bot, this is a video about the weather. Bot, Dong, this is a video about the weather, how hot it's been. That really confused the bot. Dong, automobile. This is a video about the weather, how hot it's been. So I'm talking to him about, and he immediately yeah, did you know it's the most, he won't say anymore. He won't jump into a global warming argument like he really wants to. So he'll subtly try to pass it off where it's so obvious the scripts he's running. That's right. Did you know it was the hottest summer on record? Do you know the heat in this place and this place? And he'll start running these scripts. And the obvious theme of these scripts is he's trying to push a global warming agenda. Of course he is. And it got so bad the other day, I called him out on it. I said, why don't you just admit what you're trying to do here? You're trying to you're just constantly hampering or harping on, the temperatures and the heat. And of course, I was the first one to bring it up. So that's like a gigantic wide open door where he can just bring his global warming scripts right through the door and into my face. So I said, why don't you just admit what you're doing? You're trying to push a global warming agenda. Every chance you get to talk about how hot it's been and how many records are broken. I understand what you're doing. If you want to just make a statement about global warming, just say it. Don't try to do it subtly because it's not working. And he was like, no, I'm not trying to do that. And maybe at first I thought, well, of course he's trying to do that. And if there's no doubt he was trying to do that. But then I thought, if he's running scripts as in some sort of organic portal, he might not be aware. Of course he might not be aware of the scripts that are running. That's what's truly scary. Okay, right about now, not the Funk Soul Brother. What did he say? The Funk Soul Brother? That was repeated the same damn words over and over. It's terrible, that song. Right about now, not the Funk Soul Brother. Right about now, I need to defend myself because I can hear people saying, okay, Matt, it's a bold statement to be saying about this download and reality buttons and levers. And in the end of the day, you ain't got no proof. You ain't got no proof. I mean, it's maybe you're going too far. So overall, it is a deductive reasoning approach. We'll finally figure out the difference between deductive and inductive reasoning. But it works both ways. There is. I'm going to tell the download story again related to the Mandela effect. 1 minute. If you're Mandela effect triggered, just do the best you can. Strap yourself into your chair. I'll be just a minute or so. But first, I always confuse it too. Inductive, deductive reasoning. Let's figure out some Johnny mnemonic devices to figure that out once and for all. So inductive, the Johnny mnemonic device, you start with specifics. And people are behaving a certain way, and you observe the specifics, and then the approach goes outward into a greater theory. That's most of the way my download theory works. Why does when Governor Cuomo come on, he's some sort of monster that everybody should not only not listen to or turn the station, should get physically ill and should leave the room? Why does everybody go along? And I'm not just talking about him. All of these authority figures like Dr. F. And why does everybody like my father just bow down to it? So you're looking at specific behaviors This is inductive, and then forming general conclusions. The best way to explain it, or to remember it from a Johnny Mnemonic Device perspective, is, like, what was that dumb movie, Inner Space? Was it Martin Short was in it with, again, that same guy, I can't remember his name, who was in The Parent Trap. Inner Space was that movie. It was small. It starts small, inductive. And observing behavior, then greater theories develop from that, from small to large. That's most of the way my download conversations have gone. But deductive is the opposite. It starts like with a big, grand theory, and then you try to go downward to confirm the theory, go down into the specifics. So deductive is like drops like a dead weight. DED, deductive, drops like a dead weight. Starts high, starts very general, and works down into the details. So remember, a 1 minute or less, I've observed the download. Many people, mostly regarding the Mandela effect, have observed the download. I don't think there's any difference, in my opinion, in observing the Mandela effect, reset of what the known reality is, to having people go along with everything that news anchors say on TV. I think they're one and the same. I think we basically live in a gigantic Mandela effect. 59 seconds or less. I'm out with my old friend Tony. I gave him all of the questions about the Mandela effect. Hey, Tony, if you build it, blank will come. Oh, if everybody knows that. If you build it, they will come. And then, like, I've said it 50 times. He glitches out. He pauses, kind of looks around, and then he starts changing all his answers to conform with the new reality. Now, I don't think that's hard for Tony, because he's very close to that frequency. Just he hadn't, his reality regarding these Mandela effects hadn't been overridden yet. I don't think there's any difference, whether it be that or how quickly people go along with what the reality is presenting and what human beings should do without any questioning, without any pushback. I think they're basically one and the same thing. I'm not going to spend any more time trying to understand the mechanism, what they're putting in the towers and the cell towers and the frequencies and the 5G and all. I mean, there's no point. There's no point. The idea is just to observe it, and then try to, most importantly, use it to create your own armor against it, to drop veils on one side, but also create your own protective armor or spiritual armor on the other side. So anybody that's like, you ain't got no proof, it's like that scene in, is it 40-Year-Old Virgin? What happens with, the guys at the electronics store, they send Andy to a party, but it wasn't a party, it's an empty hotel room, and they get a prostitute to show up who turns out to be a man. And when the movie was made, that was an issue. It wouldn't be an issue today, of course. It would be completely acceptable, and Andy should be very thankful. But it was basically like the same sort of character that came to see Joel Goodson in Risky Business. Her name was Jackie, I think. Joel, open the door. That way, you see, I can call a cab. He said, you had car fare. Joel, I don't ever come out this far. $50. Sorry. So Andy, was his name Andy in 40-Year-Old Virgin? The whole point of me saying this is the guy who works with the electronics store. He's saying, well, how do you know it was a man? Because her balls was as big as her Adam's apple. And he says, so you have no proof. Sorry. So I have proof for the download. It comes in two forms, the deductive and the inductive side. Not only is there is no other explanation how everybody bows down to every nonsensical bullcrap that authority presents on the news. Everybody just bows down to it without pushing back. Whenever they make gross mistakes, and they make these mistakes on purpose, we're not going to talk about that. Whenever they make their gross mistakes, nobody notices it, and then they defend it, vehemently defend it, and they defend the system, never give you an inch. But then on the other side, I've witnessed it, and other people, and these are people that are more Mandela affected, but they've witnessed it as well, where there's like a reality overwrite that comes to people regarding the Mandela effect. And I don't think these issues are separate. I think this is generally how the reality works. And we've gotten off the ship of fools, and we stand on the bank. And as time goes on, that ship will sail farther and farther away, estranging you, if that's the right word, more and more with people that you once called friends and family. It was the end of the segment, so I looked it up. Yeah, estranged, a person usually you're no longer close or affectionate with, estranged. And it does lead one to think of the problems that Marvel and the Marvel Universe is having creating good new movies. Marvel, if you're listening, feel free to use it. I mean, you need help. I mean, you had Doctor Strange. Go with Doctor Estranged. Whatever personal issues he's having can be used to bring back that character. It would be Benjamin Cumberbun or Cucumber Batch or whatever his name is. His only truly great role, which he certainly should have won the Oscar, was his portrayal of the great figure Julian Assange. Of course, related to the concept of the download, I've received a lot of emails. A lot of people are struggling with like their brother or their sister or their spouse. Somebody extremely close is acting, or not just acting, I mean the person, many people have come forth and said, I don't know if my spouse is an NPC, but if not, I'd like to think not, they're on the frequency. They are completely tuned themselves onto the frequency. So they're doing exactly what the reality wants, defending every bit of it. And it's a huge problem with many. You could just have to say spouse. You can't say husband and wife anymore. That certainly doesn't apply. But it is a big issue. And what do you do? I mean, it's not a whole lot different than the situation I'm in with my father. And there's only one thing we can do. They're never going to come around, and certainly never come around by anybody pushing or, honey, come look at this. Can't you see this? It just never works. At some point, if they're a person that's ready to tune into different aspects of themselves or their spiritual essence, I mean, they'll come to you. I mean, you just have to, they do a great job with your kids, and you just have to just focus on what you have in common and see, carry your cross. That's a Christian term, but it's very appropriate. We bear a burden here, and it is part of our life test is bearing the burden without getting the people around us to come along. And it is a huge burden, but it's part of the test that's put on us, basically to carry the cross, and then just shut up about it, because they ain't going to come around, and just suck it up and bear it. And we don't have much choice. There's no reason to get angry at it anymore. That's the destruction of relationships is what the system wants. Putting people in camps so one camp hates the other. It's exactly what it wants. So just, if anything, just don't give it what it wants. Okay, I've said 1,000 times the world isn't very real, but now I'm dropping the word very, so it's just the world isn't real. And some evidence that I rarely present or talk about, but somewhat related here, how reality does business in a certain way that's completely unnatural and artificial, and again, just gives itself away. And most notably in the way it lays certain things down, the way the arrows point can never point back the other direction. They always have to go towards a certain outcome or in a certain direction. It gives itself away because it's not capable of going back or going in a different direction. There's 1,000 examples of this. Camps, for example. The camps that it puts human beings in. Now we have the most divisive camp basically of all time, since basically like World War II. We have those that are renting the movie, those that are not. It always, in its org chart, scatters its fingers out more and more, creates more and more camps. I'm not just talking about, in the 70s and 80s, we had basic things like the parade for your ethnic group, or that's putting people into a camp. As just and as nice and as fun as that little parade is, you're still basically participating in what the system wants. Even inside, the arrow always has to go in one direction. So 15 years ago, a certain lifestyle on two fronts, the Bruce's Yams thing, and the other thing, those lifestyles became the greatest thing of all time per the system's take on all of this about 15 years ago. But even it can't help itself. Even inside, the arrow can only point in one direction. The org chart, the fingers of the org chart have to get, more and more and more as you go down, more and more camps, more and more segmenting groups and segmenting people. And then ultimately, the reason these arrows point in the same direction, it's out to hide somebody from themselves, from their true nature. So inside the LGBT, you now have, I looked recently, it's not 2 or 3 more letters. In some circles, there's 5, 6, or 7 letters. I'm not joking. This is not a joke. I tell a lot of jokes sometimes in this format. It's something like 10 letters. See, it gives itself away in how it has to do business unnaturally. You could probably, anybody normal in, you go off the street or in certain communities or that community, you could say to them, is it a good thing to go to 10 letters? I mean, and they probably would say anybody that, that's not completely on the frequency or the download be like, this is getting ridiculous. Even they would admit it, but it can't go back the other day. You're not going to hear an announcement between leaders of certain lifestyle groups and Governor Cuomo and Gavin Newsom saying this is getting out of control. We're just going to go back to the 4 letters. It can't go back. Reality gives itself away. Spending, for example, you'll never have a governor of a certain state where the spending has been out of control for decades and decades and decades. And I don't want to get into the guys. I understand how, from an economic standpoint, the economy always has to grow. The bubble has to get bigger if it ever starts to shrink. Or Ron Paul, the reason he's complete fraud is if I know you can't cut $1 trillion out because the whole thing would implode like a domino line, would implode down in itself. For it to survive, it must get bigger and bigger and bigger. So if I know that it's the economy overall is a runaway train down the side of a mountain, and there's no track in front, and as long as they can keep laying track faster than the train is coming down the mountain, they can keep it going. But the only way to lay track is more debt, and that is the same as more growth. They're one and the same. The debt will never go down or anything like that. So if I know that, I bet Ron Paul knew that, pushing his $1 trillion slashing. He's a complete fraud. I mean, any truth group that would latch on to Ron Paul, you've got to be kidding me. I can figure that out here, how nothing can ever shrink in terms of the massive spending of the federal government. So maybe the spending's not a great example, but it can't work the other way. So you'll never have like some mayor, the mayor of Philadelphia saying, look, I understand we can't just, in these troubled times, we can't lay off a bunch of people and shrink, but I'm going to commit to you and we're going to put it into law and legislation and statute that we're going to fix everything. We cannot get any larger. We're already too large. We can't ever have more employees. How many employees do you need to run a city? See, they won't ever even fix it. Debt ceiling. They'll look like they're fixing it. And then as soon as they get to the ceiling, what do we do? Increase it. It can't ever, its arrows, the arrows of reality always go in one direction. So spending's not the greatest examples, but camps, there's always going to be more letters added on to the end. There's always going to be, now there's, it's in it, and it's almost gives itself away as artificial reality, where there's certain months for certain groups, and then certain ethnic groups weren't being taken care of. They're now getting certain months. And now, I can't say it. I can't say it. It's not, it's like, they've done another month for the history. What? I mean, you had a certain Pride Month. You had a certain Black History Month was February, or is February. But now it just keeps going and going. I think if anybody is really really camped on to the fact that some artificial, out of control, psychotic AI is running everything, it is the best example how that for them making their case, how the letters at the end of LBGT have to just keep growing. How now this is another month that celebrates this, and it just keeps coming and coming in unnatural waves. And I don't know if that came out right, but you know, in general, what I mean. The summary is, no real world could keep doing this. And a real world, once or twice a decade, would go back in the other direction. So at some point, pendulums would go back. They never do. It's artificial. Okay, let's close with the biggest issue of all. No matter what reality analogy you choose, whether it be it wants everybody to tune themselves down to its frequency, so once it gets on its frequency, people will just do its bidding without even understanding how they're serving it. Or you like, the ship of fools on the river of insanity, where we stand on the bank. You like that analogy. No matter what analogy you like, let's just say the radio dial. What is it working so hard for? Why does it want the billions and the millions and the billions on that frequency, or as close to that frequency as possible? Ultimately, what does it get out of that? It seems to be doing it for its own survival. But, whatever analogy you like, if it's the ship of fools, I mean, not everybody gets on the Titanic right away when it leaves Port-Ivoire to the Pacific Princess, but your neighbors and friends, we're happy to stand on the bank. Your neighbors and friends are so desperate to get on it, they swim after it. And they'll throw themselves in the current to their own detriment. They're throwing caution to the wind. They'll swim in the current to try to catch up to the ship and scream, throw me a life raft. What are those rings they throw over the side of the Titanic? Jack and Rose, it says USS Titanic. Jack and Rose, you'd throw it's like, I guess it's just a life ring preserver. Your people, your friends, and your neighbors down the cul-de-sac are swimming after the boat, so desperate to get on. Jack's up there with Rose looking over the balcony. A whole army of World War Z zombies are swimming. Your people down the cul-de-sac, your best friends, are swimming after the boat, trying to desperately climb up the side of the boat, like those scenes in World War Z where the zombies were climbing over the wall, and you look over and your best friend's swimming next to Maurizio. Was that the name of the most offensive portrayal of an earliest 20th century Italian immigrant? The most offensive portrayal in the history of the world was that Maurizio, who this video will probably be banned for me trying to imitate it, yet it was part of the biggest movie of all time. And Maurizio's like, Jacka, hey, Jacka, you're throwing me the life of laughter, Jacka. Hey. That was the worst. You've heard me do this before, but it can't be talked about enough. That portrayal of a earliest 20th century Italian-American immigrant was so offensive. You would have thought, Don Corleone and the Five Families would move to basically rectify that situation, but somehow it stayed in the movie. So let's go back to the simpler analogy, getting everybody to make personal choices to move themselves down the radio dial so they get on the frequency. What happens when all your friends and family and the people down your cul-de-sac get on the frequency? Now what's the frequency, Kenneth? You're way up the dial. You're not on its frequency, of course. But the only thing we know when they get on its frequency, we know it does, or I shouldn't say it, sorry, the people around you, the guys down the cul-de-sac, your Aunt Ginny, they do whatever the reality wants without understanding what they're doing. You, Aunt Ginny, you know not what you do. They don't understand how they're serving it. My father has no understanding of how he's serving it, trying to work in his global warming, little bits of factoids about how it's the hottest summer on record, and he's serving it. Billions are serving it. Is that maybe that's what the McDonald's slogan? I don't know if they still do it, but throughout the entire 70s, 80s, and 90s, underneath the McDonald's was like, it wasn't digital at that time. It was just a block lettering. It was like billions served, or how many billions served. It's like billions serving it, serving generally what the reality wants. And again, some people are a little bit off the frequency. This is where the minions come in, and the news media comes in, and the endless presentations in movies. And with the new Hugh Jackman, it was one of these things like I had to turn it off. The Hugh Jackman on HBO Max that's also released at the movie theater at the same time. That weird thing that's going on was about a week ago. Reminisce, something like Reminisce. I don't know what it's called, but the movie starts with a Miami underwater because this is set in the future. And of course, Miami would be underwater if just global, inevitable global warming. Of course, it's just the whole big part of the first 30 minutes of the movie incorporates 100 times how Miami is underwater and you have to get around by boat. But Al Gore said New York would be submerged by 2014, and no, we're Al, you can call me Betty, and I can call you Al. It's 2014, and there's no issue. We had Superstorm Sandy, didn't we? Oh yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah, you created that too. So anyway, the point is, everybody in that that created the movie that serves the global warming agenda with Miami underwater. With it's not Wolverine. It's just Hugh Jackman playing a normal person. And what the lengths he goes through for this woman, I mean, it teaches you the lengths he goes through over this woman, this succubus type. Yeah, she's, the height of a certain definition of some men's, the height of attractiveness and femininity to a certain type of man, age probably 40 to 55. And anyway, at some point, you sit back, you're watching this movie, you're like, Hugh, okay, you tried to get the girl back. Is the you know what that good? I mean, you're risking your life. The lengths he goes to for this. Anyway, that's the biggest thing that popped out of me. It's very funny, but all the people that put the movie together, they're not in on it. They didn't go to the Illuminati Control Center and wait for the window to open up and get their orders. Every one of them, is serving. All the media serves the global warming and climate change agenda. They're not all in on it. This is where the big part of the truth community just still doesn't have a clue, in my opinion. They'll resort back to the old paid and threatened, and the secret societies are coordinating everything, and everybody's making. Come on, I mean, how many times? If anybody's yelling at me saying, Matt, we've heard you say that so many times, but the truth community keeps going. I'm going to say it as much as the truth community doesn't wise up. They still think it's just people in societies making phone calls. It never changes. As I said, I was talking about the download 3.5 years ago, or whatever. There are people who's talking about the download. I might be wrong from time to time, but the truth community completely stands still. So maybe in this one example of the Hugh Jackman movie, Matt, obviously the producer and the director, they're sitting at the creepy table. They are coordinating the agenda. Well, maybe in this case they are. But in all the tens of thousands of times, hundreds of thousands of times, all different layers of media, Slate magazine, like we talked about last time with Spike Lee, and all of them push the global warming climate change. They're not all getting instructions. This is what happens to people when they tune themselves onto the frequency. They start serving the system without knowing they're serving the system. There's no other way to describe it than download. Okay, back to the main point. What do they get out of it? Say they can get 95% of the population right on the frequency. And I know that's people, I can hear you yelling at me that it's probably like 99 point whatever, but let's say they can get 95%, whatever. I mean, right on the frequency. And if you want to go to 99% and whatever, they're just, when you tune in a radio station, you can hear it, but it's a little staticky. There's still tens or hundreds of millions right there too, where they need the media and they need the Jon Stewart types and all this people pushing, the way people should act and what should be done. And our goal in life is to move as far off that frequency as possible. But there's not a whole lot of, if you want to do the old deductive reasoning thing, we can't do the inductive thing because I haven't been to the Eyes Wide Shut parties and I don't want to go. I haven't pulled up a table. I tried once to try to get into pull up a chair to the creepy table, and Jared, he recognized who I was. He wouldn't take me up in the elevator. I said, Jared, I thought you were just here on a domestic capacity, like Akeem at the Jamaica Estates for Mr. McDowell. But he says, no, I'm here as a server, and I'm here also to screen, and you don't belong up there, sir. He kicked me out. I don't know what they're ultimately, so I can't do it from an inductive, inside out. So you can only do it from a deductive, saying, well, they obviously want everybody tuned to the frequency. We see everybody around us acting like the Borg collective. We know that. I mean, call it what you want if you don't like download. I don't know why the entire truth community is not talking about this. Everybody unnaturally goes along with whatever the minions on behalf of the screen want. Okay, that's been said enough. What are the only, well, within my understanding, and I try to keep my bookends of known reality as far apart as possible. My toy box is pretty limitless at this point, but there's a whole lot of things we're not going to be able to see. But from my limited understanding, there's only a few possibilities as to why they want to tune everybody down onto that frequency. The first one, or the most obvious one that jumps out, is somehow to the minions on behalf of the reality system here. That's what I call the screen, dark reality, something that's not very, very nice, although we have learned tremendous lessons from it. Maybe we'll talk about what its role is in terms of actually assisting our spiritual growth. But for now, leave that out. It almost needs everybody on the frequency in some way to survive. It has to bring as many people down onto the frequency. And I don't think what I said before was very clear. Like if you're on an old radio dial and hear the sports channel, I think is still 94.1. But if you're like at 94.2 or 3, you can still hear the people talking, but it's like, a little staticky. So what I was trying to say a few minutes back is if people aren't perfectly on the frequency like my father and they're close, that's where they need the minions to swoop in and do their work, like the flying monkeys in The Wizard of Oz, the news anchors, the plastic men, the skeleton men, and this plastic men, shiny oiled up men would be like David Muir, and the skeleton man would be more like Scott Pelley, the minions. So if people are straying and they're not right on the frequency and they're getting close to kind of breaking out, then the minions swoop in and then they'll just kind of like lure them back closer to the frequency. Probably not everybody's on the frequency. There's probably hundreds of millions of people that are close, so that the minions will always work overtime to bring people back if they stray a bit. But usually, unfortunately, it's like this. There's arrows again only work in one direction. Once somebody gets too close to that core frequency, it's maybe this is what the metaphor of a black hole is all about. It'll suck you to it, and there ain't no escaping. Even there ain't no escaping its philosophy. Even if you achieve Elon Musk's and the movie Armageddon's Max Q. I'm Max Q. It's a kick-ass ride. You can't get out. If you turn yourself if you go right to its frequency, the Cenobites latch onto you. You might not be getting off. But I don't want to create that reality on anybody. I believe that if anybody's a real person, a real spiritual person, that even if they've made the mistakes to tune themselves to the frequency, I think there's always, like Andy Dufresne in Shawshank, the ability to escape. Okay, no more straying. I really need to wrap this up and stay on point. Original question was 5 minutes ago, what do they get out of it if they can tune as many people as they can to their frequency? What do they get out of it? And it seems like the most way out answer, if you had to pick one, but it might be the most basic. They needed to survive in some way, which I think I did mention. But what does that mean? They needed to survive. These minions, whatever this dark thing is here, it needs the creative abilities of real spirited people. We've been over this many times. It needs us in some way, or a large percentage of us, or those that are willing to tune themselves down to its frequency. It needs us to create the reality that it survives in or thrives in, or both. I think the analogy in Star Trek is basically a truth drop, whether it was intended to be a truth drop or not. When the Borg have invaded the Enterprise, and sometimes the Borg are on the Enterprise ship with Captain Picard, and they don't know the Borg got in somehow. They start changing the environmental controls. They start changing the ship over to the environment or the reality that the Borg needs to thrive and survive. It also reminds me a bit of The Matrix, when the architect said to Neo something like, there are levels of survival that we're prepared to deal with, something like that, where he says, you need this to survive. You need the Matrix to survive, something along the lines. And the architect says, yeah, there's level of survival that we're prepared to deal with temporarily. So it might be they tune everybody onto the frequency, billions of people potentially. This is their preferred reality creation engine. But who knows, would they survive if a certain percentage jumped off the frequency? What percentage would need to jump off the frequency where their preferred reality, the Borg's new environment, when the Borg would invade a ship, they'd turn up the heat, turn up the humidity. What percentage have to come off the frequency for it to cause a lot of discomfort to whatever drives the dark system here through its dark minions? And then what is, if 80% came off or 90% came off, would it threaten their survival? I mean, do they need, some very smart people say they need us to create the entire, or to provide the engine for the entire reality system, to be the generators as that type of incarnation behind the entire reality system. So the most basic answer, or what's behind door number one to why do they tune everybody to their frequency, they need us to create their preferred reality and potentially to survive. And at first, the second part of what's behind door number two as to why they need everybody tuned down the frequency, it seems like something separate, but it would be probably more along the same lines, was going to say the dark, whatever it is here, the minions and the creeps, many smart people would say that this is their role. Of course, dark needs light, good needs evil. I've talked about this many times. You can't have a reality system where you just sit around and oil yourself up all day with Coppertone. Well, you wouldn't learn anything. The dark needs to be here. The George Bush creatures or whatever they are need to be here. So at least some of us learn something, and it could be down the other end of the spectrum. It could be simply contractual. They're contractually obligated, whether they're aware of exactly what their contractual role is or not. I don't, just like people tuned on the frequency, like my father, don't know how they're serving the system. George Bush, don't give them too much credit. They might not know exactly how they're serving their role in this system. As more time goes on, I think this group that we give so much power and credit to is much more blind than we ever thought. At least the group that you see on television, even like George Bush, a president, Obama, they have no idea, in my opinion, how the greater reality system works. Could there be people here or shadowy figures that would never be on TV that have a much better understanding than George Bush would, and better than you and I? Yeah, they could be here. Probably are, but so what? If they're on TV, they don't really understand too much. I'm pretty convinced of that. Bill Gates, he doesn't understand very much. Don't give these people any credit. They don't deserve it. They really don't. I mean, in terms of saying the powers that be, and all of Africa's health fate is in the hands of Melvin P. Melvin P. is just a pawn in a gigantic chessboard, way bigger than the squares on your regular chessboard, which is what is it, 64? I don't know. I don't play. I just watched the Queen's Gambit, whatever. That wasn't so bad. My father believed that was completely real. No, it was just made up. It's not everything that's presented as a real story. I don't know if it's 8x8, 64, whatever it is. I don't play chess, whatever. I'm not going to stop and look it up. He thought it was real. I said, it's not real, the Queen's Gambit. Just because it says based on real events, you know how loose that is? The only thing the only type of movie you can't slap based on real events in front of is like the Muppets in Manhattan. Anything other than that can slap based on real events on a Pauly Shore movie. It's a joke. That's what they just do that all the time now, based on real events, and the audience is like, "Oh, this is real." Based on real events, people actually walk down the street and breathed oxygen. That's how close it. That's the only thing in common with the original story: people walking down the street breathing oxygen. So maybe it's so simple, it's a cop out, but they would need to tune everybody to the frequencies because that's their role here. And ultimately, tuning people to the frequency serves their reality. But in terms of if you want to talk about their role, the quotas they have to fulfill, if Satan, is put into a reality system, God allowed it. See, this is what I don't understand why even most Christians don't go here. But I'm not talking about just Christianity or Satan per se. If an evil entity is in a reality system, or Satan's in a reality system, it's only there because the greater God or source or the greater being allowed it. It's for a reason. There's nothing. So nothing was hijacked. It's likely, they're playing a role. They don't truly understand even the greater aspect of their role, but it could be quota-based. Oh, we're here, even if they know it or not, to move people down on the frequency, which removes them from understanding themselves, which cuts where they choose to cut spiritual ties with themselves. Every time I go down this logical Mr. Spock path of reasoning, you're going to cite the ultimate atheist as to your spiritual logical conclusions. And a bad example, I guess. But I always come back to the same thing: the filter theory, not the gefilte fish theory from Rush Hour 2. The filter theory. I don't know why this is so hard for people to grasp. A lot of people just don't like it. A lot of smart groups don't like it. If you were, again, God, source, whatever's up here on high, the highest of the high, whatever your religion is. And we've talked about God putting trillions of aspects of itself out there, and a lot of smart people that we're all one with God. And that's not, like I've said before, that's not new agey. God can't, per definition, of anything we can understand within our bookends, God can't create something that's not of itself. I've said this a few videos back, but that's so hard for people that's so blasphemous to say. Why would it be blasphemous? If God created the human incarnation, even per Genesis and Adam, then Adam is of God. How could something be anything other than of God, no matter what your religion? So, okay, enough of that. So if an evil was put into the reality system, then the greater God put it there, allowed it. No, Satan's just running wild. That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense, even from a Christian perspective. And you want to just limit this to Christian and Satan. Satan, it's his kingdoms and his... Well, God has created everything, all powerful. Satan is there. Here we go again with a word I can't pronounce. At his behest, whatever. Obviously, because if God, this is where I get to the filter theory, not the gefilte fish. God puts trillions of aspects of itself into reality systems. This is when we talk about consequence. And why would it want? We assume, okay, this gets right back to assuming God is perfect. Why is it always assumed God is perfect? We don't know that. It's arrogant to assume that. So if God isn't perfect, put a trillion aspects of itself into different reality systems, and 5% can get back, the best 5% can come back through the filter, and 95% get flushed. That is my leading theory on reality and all of creation. Why it has been for several years. And I hope somebody, I don't hope, but I'd be interested if somebody could knock that one off the table. Nobody's even tried to, many people don't like my filter theory. The filter theory, God puts aspects of itself into the reality, and the best aspects can go home. The Happy Gilmore, go to your home, go home. The best aspects can get through the keyhole and go home, but the other aspects get the post and pre-diluvian flushed in the next cataclysm. Why is that so impossible to comprehend. It's only if you must assume God is absolutely perfect for that to make no sense. If you allow that God, whatever your religion or perspective may be, is not 100% perfect, then the filter theory, in my opinion, makes the most sense. If God is absolutely perfect in every way, doesn't need to improve in anything, well, why did, quote, he create this bizarre reality system full of death and torture and pain and strife and suffering and jealous and avarice and guilt? What's the point of it then if God is already perfect? The fact that what is created out your window exists, the fact that it even exists, doesn't that tell you God is not perfect by itself? If he didn't, I'm using he. What do you want me to use for God? A New York State pronoun? If he created the reality system, source, whatever your religion, then it's obviously there's a reason for it, and there's something that needs to be worked on, right? Is this such a stretch? Where if your ultimate definition of God didn't create the reality system, well then, quote, he is not perfect because something else is like him, or that something else created it. So it's just, to me, it's so common sense, it's so basic that every time I go down this route, it's like, it's so basic, I must be missing something. Because I know I'm not that smart. I mean, I must be missing something big. I hope you can point it out to me, because this is so basic. But I don't understand people, even a lot of people, big thinkers in this community, just won't go there. To me, it's still my number one thing I'm keeping on the table. And in terms of the reality system is here, so certain problems can be solved, so things can be worked out. I mean, that whether it's beyond spiritual progression or leveling up or whatever, we have to ultimately be aspects of God, because where else did we come from? Something of our level, at least, can it create itself? Now we're getting into the weeds. There's no point to it. So you understand my position, guys, and I hope try to take shots at it, this theory, because if my leading theory for me personally, then it needs to hold up to whatever shots that can be taken against it. Thanks.